I'm Olivia Reed, 35, a crisis communications expert in New York City. For 7 years, I poured my blood and sweat into building my career, culminating in a $120 million global campaign for 3 multinational corporations. But overnight, everything was stolen by my former boss, Richard Lawson, a man I once trusted. He colluded with rival Victor Lane, tossing me aside like trash, turning my hard work into a stepping stone for their empire. They were hailed in the press, while I was branded a failure, losing my job, my reputation, and my standing in the industry. I almost gave up, ready to walk away and accept that the game was rigged and brutal. Then came Daniel, an IT engineer I'd once defended when Lawson tried to pin a system sabotage on him. He was the only one who believed in me. Before I left, Daniel found me and handed over a hard drive, hundreds of emails, secret contracts, and shady financial dealings Lawson had ordered him to erase. He told me I was the only one brave enough to bring the truth to light. I know exposing it could cost me my life, but I can't stay silent anymore. I have to stand up, expose the crimes of these so-called heroes, and make them pay. Every day I wake up to a city that never sleeps, a firm that never quits, and a boss who never acknowledges what I do. Richard Lawson, my superior, has perfected the art of looking impressive while doing the bare minimum, and somehow he always manages to take credit for my ideas. The morning started like any other, with the hum of traffic outside my apartment and the scent of coffee brewing. Jenna, my assistant, was already in my inbox with a dozen alerts flagged urgent. I skimmed through them while pouring my coffee. "Olivia, you need to see this," she said, leaning over my shoulder. I frowned. "What now?" She swiped her tablet, showing a viral post that had already made its way across social media. Our biggest client, Everbright Technologies, was facing backlash over a data leak. Allegedly, millions of user records had been compromised, and people were furious. The press was already calling for accountability. I muttered under my breath, "This is bad. Really bad." Jenna looked worried. "Do you think we can handle it?" I rubbed my temple. "We can, but we have to act fast. I'm already formulating the strategy. Immediate press statement, transparent communication, a timeline of corrective actions, and a carefully orchestrated social media presence to calm panic." By the time I arrived at the firm, chaos had already spread through the office. Phones were ringing nonstop, interns sprinted between desks, and my team looked both panicked and exhausted. I called everyone together. "Listen up," I said, holding up my hands. "The leak is serious, but it's not the end of the world. We can contain this if we act strategically. I've already mapped out a response plan. I need your full attention and cooperation." Richard entered the room at that moment, his tailored suit immaculate, his smug expression perfectly in place. "Olivia," he said, "I appreciate your input, but I've got this. You take a step back." I blinked. "Excuse me." He waved a dismissive hand. "I'm going to handle the client call. You stay out of it." My stomach twisted, but I swallowed my frustration. Fine, let him make his mistakes. I would be ready when it blew up. And blow up it did. Within hours, the social media backlash intensified. Hashtags demanding accountability trended nationwide. News anchors speculated about Everbright's negligence. Richard's mismanaged statements were confusing, contradictory, and sometimes outright wrong. The client's executives called in a panic, unsure if our firm even understood the gravity of the situation. I stayed behind the scenes, monitoring every report, every tweet, every viral post. It was all too clear. This was no accident. The leaks were precise, targeted, and timed perfectly to maximize damage. Someone wanted Everbright to fail spectacularly. I pulled Jenna aside. "This isn't random," I said. "Look at the timing, the sources, the way the narrative is spinning. Someone is orchestrating this." She leaned over the tablet. "Are you thinking competitors?" "Exactly," I said. "And we need to move fast before Richard makes it worse." But he did make it worse. During a conference call with Everbright, Richard fumbled questions, contradicted prior statements, and blamed internal teams without evidence. I could hear Sarah Thompson, the client, trying to maintain composure. "Richard," I whispered under my breath, "this is not how you do this." He looked around as if sensing my presence and shot me a glare. "Olivia, this is my meeting," he snapped. I clenched my fists but forced calm. Fine, I would wait. I would bide my time until I could act without him sabotaging everything. By late afternoon, I had put together a covert plan. Using a network of trusted contacts, journalists, and social media analysts, I mapped out a controlled release of facts, prepared statements, and a transparent narrative for the public. I even identified the likely competitor behind the attack, based on digital footprints and insider chatter. Jenna looked at me nervously. You're not supposed to do this behind his back. I met her gaze. And what if he fails completely? The client trusts us, not him. I won't let their reputation collapse because he's egotistical. The next morning, Richard decided to take full control of the situation publicly. He issued a statement that only inflamed the backlash. Investors panicked, the stock dipped, and Everbright executives called in desperation. I watched the carnage unfold from my office, fury coiling in my chest. I picked up my phone and dialed Sarah directly. "Olivia," she said, "the stock is dropping fast and Richard's messaging is making it worse." "What do we do?" I took a deep breath. "Sarah, trust me. I can fix this, but I need to act independently." She hesitated. "Are you sure, Olivia?" "Absolutely. I've handled crises bigger than this. You just have to trust me." Meanwhile, I discovered another layer to the scandal. Leaks pointed to deliberate manipulation, timed to appear like an internal failure. Patterns suggested a competitor's attack designed to destabilize Everbright and our firm's credibility simultaneously. I met with Marcus Chen, our tech analyst. "Marcus," I said, "this isn't random. Look at the sources, the timestamps, the distribution channels. Something is orchestrating this." Marcus nodded. "I've been tracking it. Whoever did this knows our moves in advance." We spent hours cross-referencing emails, posts, and internal leaks. Everything led back to Victor Lane, a rival PR executive known for aggressive tactics. By midweek, the damage was catastrophic. Richard's attempts at spin had only made the story worse, with headlines calling him incompetent and questioning the firm's integrity. I realized I could no longer wait. I had to intervene from outside the official channels, quietly aligning with Sarah and a small, trusted team. I met with Emily Rivera, our media liaison. "We need to control the narrative outside the firm," I said. "No official channels, no interference from Richard. Just targeted, precise messaging that restores confidence." Emily nodded. "I'll coordinate journalists, press releases, and social campaigns. We'll make it look organic, credible, and unstoppable." As the weekend approached, I worked tirelessly, drafting statements, briefing Sarah, coordinating Marcus and Emily, and preparing to execute the plan. Every detail mattered. One misstep could ruin the client completely. Late at night, I reflected on the irony. A career built on rescuing reputations, yet my own contributions constantly minimized or stolen. Richard had no idea that the woman he dismissed was about to turn the tide. I whispered to myself, "Olivia, this is your moment. Time to prove what you're truly capable of." And that was just the beginning. The weekend was my battlefield. While the city slept, I pored over data, press releases, and social media threads. Every post, every comment, every news headline was a piece of a puzzle I had to solve before Monday. The stakes were higher than ever. If we failed, Everbright's reputation would be irreparably damaged, and Richard would claim he had tried. Jenna called early Saturday morning. "Olivia, you look exhausted." "Are you sure about this?" I took a sip of my cold coffee. "I've never been more certain. Trust me." Marcus joined me soon after, laptop open, eyes scanning lines of code and metadata. "Here, look at this," he said. These leaks weren't just timed, they were calculated to coincide with Richard's press statements. Whoever did this had inside knowledge of our firm's moves. "So it's Victor Lane," I muttered. "He wants chaos." "But why?" Marcus shrugged. "Could be clients, could be personal. Lane always plays dirty." Emily arrived next, carrying a folder of media contacts. "Olivia, we can start pushing counter-narratives today. We'll do interviews, op-eds, and social media strategically. No official firm association. Just controlled, credible information." I nodded. "Let's make it precise, factual, and impossible to misinterpret." By midday, Sarah Thompson called. "Olivia, I don't know how you're doing this, but I trust you. I can't believe Richard left us in the lurch." I forced a small smile. "You're not alone. We're going to fix this." Our first move was a targeted press release, highlighting the steps Everbright had already taken to secure user data, emphasizing transparency and accountability. Every detail was double-checked, every quote meticulously crafted. Emily coordinated with journalists who valued integrity, quietly briefing them on the evidence we had collected. Marcus monitored online responses in real time, flagging misinformation and identifying the viral posts that needed debunking. By evening, the first wave went live. The initial response was cautious optimism. People appreciated the clarity and honesty, and the social media tide began to shift. But Richard was oblivious. He sent a frantic email demanding an update. "Olivia, what are you doing?" "This is my project. I have authority here." I replied carefully, "I'm protecting the client. The public needs accurate information." He shot back, "You're overstepping. You're fired." I stared at the screen and laughed quietly. Fired or not, they can't ignore the truth, not when it's already in motion. Sunday, we escalated. Marcus uncovered a series of internal emails from Victor Lane's firm confirming the orchestrated attack. Screenshots, IP addresses, and metadata all pointed to a deliberate sabotage campaign. I shared the evidence with Sarah. Sarah, this was planned. Victor Lane wanted to destroy you and the company, and Richard failed to protect you. She looked horrified. I trusted him. How could he do this? I shook my head. He isn't capable of seeing beyond his ego. That's why we have to act carefully. With my mother's advice in mind, I crafted the next phase. We would expose Victor's manipulations publicly while simultaneously neutralizing Richard's interference. But it had to be subtle. Direct confrontation could backfire. I called my mother that evening. Mom, it's happening again. He's taking credit, sabotaging from within, and now I'm officially sidelined. Her voice was calm, authoritative. Olivia, you know what to do. You've survived bigger storms. Focus on the facts, gather your allies, and let evidence speak louder than office politics. By Monday morning, the plan was in motion. Carefully timed releases, coordinated interviews, and social media posts began reshaping the narrative. We highlighted Everbright's proactive measures, the false narratives propagated by Lane's firm, and clarified misstatements Richard had made. Throughout the day, I watched the stock stabilize, media sentiment improve, and social chatter shift. Everbright employees sent emails of gratitude, and even some clients called directly to thank us for transparency. Meanwhile, Richard panicked. I received a terse email. Olivia, retract all your statements. This is unacceptable. I ignored it. The public already knew the truth, and attempts to suppress it would only backfire. By mid-afternoon, Victor Lane's manipulations were being questioned openly. Bloggers and analysts started connecting the dots, citing internal leaks and suspicious patterns. Marcus, monitoring the analytics, whispered, "It's working. People are seeing the inconsistencies. Lane's attack is unraveling." I allowed myself a small, victorious smile. This was more than strategy, it was justice. Richard, sensing his authority slipping, tried to salvage control with a press conference. I watched from the sidelines, grimacing as he stumbled through prepared statements, contradicted himself, and failed to address key questions. Sarah later told me, "Olivia, I can't believe he's this incompetent. I almost didn't want to see it, but watching him now is surreal." I shrugged. He had his chance. Now it's time for real expertise to prevail. By evening, the crisis was largely contained. Headlines praised Everbright's transparency. Some subtly credited anonymous sources who corrected false narratives. I knew those sources were us, acting discreetly but effectively. I called Jenna. Mission partially accomplished. The client is safe, but the deeper battle is just beginning. She smiled. "You're incredible, Olivia. Even fired, you saved the day." I chuckled softly. Sometimes being invisible is the best position to act. That night, alone in my apartment, I reflected on everything. Richard's betrayal, Victor Lane's sabotage, and my own resilience. The work had been exhausting, relentless, and risky, but the results spoke for themselves. And in the quiet, I made a decision. I would not allow Richard to continue undermining talent or Victor Lane to manipulate outcomes for personal gain. This crisis was just the beginning of a larger fight for fairness, integrity, and accountability. Monday night left the office eerily quiet, the hum of fluorescent lights the only sound as I stayed behind, piecing together the final layers of the sabotage. Marcus's screen glowed beside me, filled with lines of data that confirmed everything I had feared. "Olivia," he said, "I traced the internal memos, emails, and digital footprints. There's more here than just Victor Lane. Someone inside the company coordinated with him." I frowned. "You mean Richard?" Marcus nodded. "Exactly. He had access, and the way the leaks coincided with his statements, it wasn't coincidence." I ran my fingers through my hair. "So this is the plan. He's using the crisis to his advantage, maybe even to profit or make deals with Lane. He's playing everyone." Jenna arrived quietly, holding a folder of media clips and tweets. "Olivia, the public response is shifting in our favor, but it's temporary. If Richard keeps pushing his narrative, he can still damage the client's reputation again." I leaned back, considering every angle. Then I realized I couldn't fight him from inside the firm anymore. He had authority over approvals, over emails, even over the client's trust. The only way to act decisively was from the outside. That night, I dialed my mother. "Mom," I said, "it's happening again. Richard's sabotaging the client, and I'm powerless within the firm. I need your advice." Her voice was calm, familiar, and unwavering. "Olivia, you know this man. I've faced him before. He thrives on control, on silencing anyone who challenges him. but you are smarter, faster, and he underestimates you. Build your own strategy, work outside his sphere, and don't let emotion cloud your judgment. I listened intently. How did you survive him before, Mom? She sighed. Careful planning, keeping allies close, knowing when to act publicly, and knowing when to let evidence speak. He thought he could bury me, but the truth always finds a way, you'll see. By Tuesday morning, I was in full operation mode. I coordinated a covert plan with Sarah Thompson, the client, and a small trusted circle. Marcus and Emily became my right-hand strategists, tracking leaks and coordinating media exposure. Sarah looked nervous as we sat in a quiet conference room away from the firm. Olivia, this feels risky. If Richard finds out, I could lose everything. I reached across the table. Sarah, I know. But right now, protecting your company and your reputation is more important than office politics. Trust me. Meanwhile, I reached out to my mother for guidance on dealing with Victor Lane and political entanglements we were beginning to uncover. Mom, what if this goes deeper than a competitor attack? Her tone was grave. Olivia, I suspect it does. These attacks are never isolated. There's usually a network, a chain of interests, and they won't hesitate to use anyone for leverage. You need to find every link. We spent the day compiling evidence. Emails, internal memos, leaked messages, and financial transfers slowly revealed a pattern. Richard had been working in tandem with Lane, manipulating the crisis to benefit himself and possibly profiting from deals linked to political contacts. Jenna and I reviewed every detail. It was staggering. How could someone so respected in the firm act with such blatant corruption? Jenna shook her head. Olivia, this is massive. How do we even begin to confront it without blowing up the client completely? We needed leverage, solid proof that could stand up under scrutiny. Marcus found transaction records, emails, and copies of signed contracts linking Richard to outside interests. Emily started building a confidential media dossier that would withstand legal scrutiny. Late in the afternoon, Sarah called again. Olivia, I feel trapped. I can't fire Richard directly, and he's ruining everything. I held the phone close. You're not alone, we'll expose the truth, but carefully. Step by step, evidence first, narrative second. By evening, we had our plan. First, stabilize public perception, continue neutralizing Lane's manipulations, and then gather undeniable evidence to remove Richard from power and prevent further sabotage. I called my mother again. Mom, I'm ready. I have the client's support, and we've gathered evidence. How do we handle this next phase? She smiled faintly. Olivia, you always know what to do. Confidence, strategy, and patience. Let him make mistakes while you quietly compile proof, then strike decisively. That night I stayed at the office reviewing the evidence again, screens filled with emails, spreadsheets, and screenshots. Each detail reinforced the plan. Richard's arrogance was his weakness. He never anticipated that I could operate independently and strategically. Emily appeared with coffee. Olivia, I don't envy what comes next, but we've got your back. I nodded, gratitude in my chest. We moved together, quietly and efficiently. The following day, we began our public countermeasures. Carefully worded press statements, controlled leaks highlighting Everbright's integrity, and a series of interviews clarifying factual inaccuracies shifted the narrative dramatically. Richard tried to interfere, sending emails and calling the client, but by now Sarah was briefed and refused to engage with him directly. I had effectively isolated him from the decision-making process. Marcus and Emily monitored the effects, social media sentiment, and media coverage in real time. The tide began to turn in our favor. Headlines praised Everbright's transparency, questioned Lane's methods, and highlighted the factual inconsistencies in Richard's public statements. That evening, I received an encrypted message from an investigative journalist. Olivia, we've verified some of the internal communications and financial connections. Are you ready to share evidence for an exclusive? I read it carefully. Yes, now is the time. By coordinating the release of this evidence, we exposed the full scope of the sabotage and Richard's collusion with Lane without endangering the client or prematurely alerting him. Sarah called later, voice trembling. Olivia, you've done it. The client's reputation is saved, and the public narrative is finally in our control. I let out a long sigh, exhausted but satisfied. This was not just a victory for the client. It was proof that skill, strategy, and integrity could overcome ego, corruption, and sabotage. Later that night, I called my mother. Mom, it's done. She chuckled softly. Olivia, I knew you could do it. You didn't just save a company. You set a precedent. Never forget, integrity wins when you plan carefully and act decisively. As I walked home under the city lights, exhaustion and adrenaline mingling, I reflected on the journey. Richard's betrayal, Lane's attacks, the client's precarious position, and my mother's guidance all converged into a single lesson. In crisis management, as in life, preparation, courage, and decisive action can turn even the darkest moment into triumph. And as I reached my apartment, I knew this was only the beginning. There were larger battles ahead, systemic corruption to confront, and a path to reclaim power and integrity in my own right. Tuesday morning started with a gray sky over New York, but inside my small home office, everything was vivid with urgency. I sat with Marcus and Emily, screens glowing, spreadsheets open, and emails lined up like soldiers waiting for orders. "Olivia," Marcus said, "you need to see this." He displayed a series of financial transactions that traced back to political lobbying firms. Some of the funds linked directly to the competitor, Victor Lane, while others funneled through shell accounts tied to Richard. I leaned forward, absorbing the details. This is bigger than I thought. Richard wasn't just sabotaging internally, he was part of a network leveraging crises for profit and political gain. Emily frowned, so it's not just about the client. Lane and Richard are using crises to manipulate public perception, stock prices, and maybe even government contracts. Exactly, I said. And if we expose this, it's going to shake more than just our firm. It's risky, but we can't ignore it. I called Sarah Thompson immediately. "Sarah," I said, "you need to understand something. The scandal wasn't random. There's a network behind it, including your competitors and people in positions of influence." She gasped. "I knew the attacks were aggressive, but this is criminal." I nodded. "I need your trust more than ever. We can protect you and reveal the truth, but we have to act carefully." Over the next few hours, Marcus traced connections between Richard, Lane, and several political operatives who had stakes in Everbright's competitors. Emails, contracts, and off-the-books meetings painted a picture of deliberate sabotage coordinated to benefit both Lane and Richard financially and politically. Jenna arrived with coffee. "Olivia, how are we going to handle this without completely blowing up? The client is already nervous. We'll expose the truth carefully," I said. "Facts first, narrative second, but we'll need evidence that can't be ignored. Marcus and Emily, start compiling everything into a dossier. Sarah, make sure you're ready to support the release." By evening, I reached out to my mother. "Mom, this is bigger than anything before. It's political, financial, organized." Her voice was steady. "Olivia, this is why I warned you. The higher stakes, the more dangerous the network. But you have something they can't touch: evidence, credibility, and the client's trust. Use it wisely." We began preparing a coordinated release, a multi-layered approach. First, targeted press releases highlighting Everbright's transparency and corrective actions. Second, strategic leaks to investigative journalists about suspicious activities surrounding the scandal. Third, monitoring social media to correct false narratives before they spiraled. I called Victor Lane's bluff directly. I sent anonymous tips linking him to questionable lobbying activities, knowing journalists would pursue it aggressively. Lane had underestimated me, thinking I would be sidelined, but I was in control outside the firm. Meanwhile, Richard grew desperate. I received multiple panicked emails. "Olivia, stop interfering. This is my authority. The client is confused." I ignored them. The client's trust mattered more than Richard's ego. I focused on the evidence, ensuring every document, email, and transaction was airtight. Sarah and I held private strategy sessions daily. "Olivia," she said, "this could ruin careers, even mine. Are we ready for that?" I leaned back. "Sarah, it's not about ruin. It's about truth, accountability, and protection. If we stay silent, the network continues. If we act, we set a precedent that integrity matters." By Thursday, media interest spiked. Investigative journalists had picked up our anonymous tips. Questions arose publicly about Richard's and Lane's conduct. The client's stock remained stable because our controlled releases reassured investors, while the opposition crumbled under scrutiny. Marcus reported another development. "Olivia, some of the emails suggest insider manipulation of public statements to favor Richard's personal interests. He's using the crisis as leverage to secure contracts and kickbacks." I exhaled. "So this confirms everything. It's not incompetence, it's deliberate." Emily looked at me. "Are we ready to go public with this?" "Not yet," I said. "We need everything aligned. The press releases, client support, and evidence must hit simultaneously to prevent counterattacks. Timing is critical." That night, I reviewed the dossier one last time. Emails, transactions, meeting notes, timestamps, all meticulously organized. Every piece told a story Richard and Lane hoped would stay hidden. I called my mother again. Mom, we're ready. Her tone was proud, calm, and firm. Olivia, you've done everything right. Patience, precision, and preparation. The network underestimated you. Now it's time to finish this. Friday morning, the first wave of strategic releases went live. Carefully worded press statements, investigative reports, and social media posts highlighted Everbright's actions and exposed discrepancies in Richard's public statements. Richard tried to intervene, sending frantic emails and calling the client. Sarah refused to engage. Olivia, she whispered over the phone, "Thank you. I don't know what I would do without you." I smiled. "You're doing everything right. Trust the evidence, trust the process." By afternoon, journalists were publishing pieces connecting Lane and Richard to insider manipulation and questionable lobbying practices. Public perception shifted rapidly. Investor confidence returned, and Everbright's reputation began to stabilize. I observed Richard and the firm from afar. Panic replaced his usual smugness. Every attempt he made to spin the story backfired. Lane's orchestrated attacks were now exposed. Marcus updated me. "Olivia, traffic shows massive engagement on the stories. The public is demanding accountability." I allowed myself a small smile. This was justice. Not just for Everbright, but for everyone who had suffered because of their manipulation. That evening, Sarah called again. "Olivia, you've done more than save the company. You've shown that truth matters, that skill, integrity, and courage can overcome corruption and manipulation." I exhaled, exhausted but satisfied. "Yes," I said, "but it's not over. We still need to remove Richard from the picture completely and prevent any future attacks." Later that night, alone in my apartment, I reflected on everything: the sabotage, the corruption, the network of influence, and my mother's guidance. Every challenge, every obstacle had prepared me to act decisively. And I knew the next step would be the most important: exposing Richard fully, dismantling the network, and ensuring the client and the public understood the truth without collateral damage. This crisis had become personal, and I was ready to see it through. Monday morning, I woke to the realization that this crisis was far bigger than I had imagined. Every step I took seemed to reveal another layer of manipulation, and the deeper I dug, the clearer it became that Richard Lawson had been orchestrating power plays long before the Everbright crisis. I called my mother, Margaret Reed, who had been my guide through the early stages of this battle. "Mom," I said, "I'm seeing a pattern now. Richard's not just self-serving, he's systematically destroyed careers, including yours." Her voice was calm, almost sorrowful. "Olivia, you're finally seeing the full picture. He targeted me decades ago, undermined my clients, stole credit, and ruined my reputation at the firm I built. I never exposed him because the cost was too high." I felt a chill. "You mean he's been doing this his entire career and we're just catching up to it?" "Yes," she replied. "And now it's your turn to finish what I couldn't." I took a deep breath. I felt both fear and determination. This wasn't just about Everbright anymore. It was about dismantling Richard's web of corruption once and for all. By mid-morning, I had arranged a private meeting with Sarah and my closest allies, Marcus, Emily, and Jenna. I needed everyone fully aligned. I laid out what I had discovered. Richard's manipulation went beyond incompetence. He had colluded with Victor Lane and a network of political operatives to benefit personally from crises like the one we were facing. He had insider connections, kickbacks, and had even used client vulnerabilities for leverage. Sarah's eyes widened. "Olivia, this is huge. Are we talking criminal activity?" "Yes," I said, "and if we don't act decisively, it will continue. I'm proposing a coordinated exposure, evidence, media strategy, and controlled releases that will leave no room for denial." Emily spoke up. "We can handle the media, control the narrative, and protect the client. Marcus can trace digital footprints and confirm connections, but we need proof, undeniable proof, that Richard and Lane orchestrated everything." I nodded. "We have emails, financial transactions, and insider communications. Marcus has verified every piece. This is airtight." Jenna leaned forward. "Olivia, this is dangerous. Richard will retaliate." I looked at her with steely determination. "Jenna, we've faced risk before. This time, we are armed with facts, credibility, and strategy. We move carefully, but we move." Later that day, I met my mother in a quiet cafe. "Mom," I said, "I need the insight only you have. How did you survive Richard?" She sipped her coffee, eyes thoughtful. "Olivia, the key is patience and precision. He thrives on impulsive reactions. Let him make mistakes while you gather evidence. When you strike, do it in a way that can't be ignored or twisted." I nodded, absorbing every word. That evening, I returned to my apartment and began drafting the counterattack. Every press release, interview, and social media post was meticulously planned. Timing was everything. I called Sarah to align on messaging. Sarah, I said, we need to present the evidence in a coordinated release. Your support is crucial because it establishes credibility and shows the client is fully aware and cooperative. Sarah hesitated briefly. Olivia, I'm scared. If this goes wrong. I placed a hand over the phone. We've prepared meticulously. We control the narrative and we have undeniable proof. Trust the plan. By Wednesday, the plan was in motion. Emily coordinated journalists, ensuring they had access to verified documents and evidence. Marcus monitored the spread of information, correcting false narratives instantly. Jenna managed communications with internal stakeholders to prevent leaks that could compromise our strategy. Meanwhile, Richard remained oblivious, sending frantic emails and attempting to regain control of the narrative. Olivia, he wrote, retract your statements immediately. This is my project. I ignored him. The public already had partial information, and attempts to suppress it would only fuel suspicion. By Thursday morning, the media cycle began reporting discrepancies in Richard's statements. Investigative journalists connected dots linking him to Victor Lane and the network of operatives. Social media discussions began questioning his integrity. I watched Sarah's reactions closely. Olivia, she said quietly, it's working. People are questioning everything he's done. I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. Yes, but this is only the beginning. We still need to dismantle his network and ensure this doesn't happen again. That afternoon, I received confirmation from Marcus. Olivia, the financial transactions, emails, and communications are fully documented. This can't be denied. I leaned back, thinking about the implications. We had the leverage to not only save Everbright but to expose Richard publicly and dismantle his corrupt operations. That evening, I spoke to my mother again. Mom, we're ready. Her voice was filled with pride. Olivia, you've done everything right. Now it's time to finish this. Strike with precision, protect the client, and ensure the network is dismantled completely. The next morning, Friday, we began the final phase. Coordinated press releases, confidential tips to investigative journalists, and strategic social media engagement created a domino effect. Headlines highlighted Everbright's proactive response, discrepancies in Richard's statements, and connections to Lane's firm. Richard panicked. I received multiple frantic emails and calls. Olivia, he wrote, stop this immediately. I didn't respond. The evidence spoke louder than any words. Sarah called later. Olivia, I don't know what to say. This is incredible. You've not only saved the client but exposed the full corruption behind the crisis. I exhaled, exhaustion mixing with triumph. Yes, I said, but the work isn't done. We need to ensure accountability and prevent future sabotage. That night, alone in my apartment, I reflected on everything: the sabotage, Richard's betrayal, the political and financial corruption, and my mother's guidance. Every detail, every action had led to this moment. I knew what had to come next: final exposure of Richard, full accountability for Lane's manipulations, and the creation of safeguards to protect clients from such corruption in the future. And as I looked out over the New York skyline, I felt a deep resolve. I would finish this. I would ensure integrity, justice, and transparency prevailed. Friday morning, I woke with the city buzzing beneath my window, the familiar hum of traffic reminding me that the world wouldn't wait for anyone. I sipped my coffee and reviewed the plan one last time. Today was the day we executed the final phase, exposing Richard, dismantling Lane's manipulations, and restoring Everbright's reputation completely. I gathered Marcus, Emily, and Jenna in my apartment for a final briefing. Everyone's eyes were focused, tension mixed with determination. Marcus, the data's ready, I said. All emails, transactions, and communications verified. Nothing can be disputed. Emily nodded. The press contacts are briefed and waiting for the coordinated release. Timing is everything. Jenna added, Olivia, are you sure we want to go public today? This will blow up internally at the firm. I leaned forward. Yes, the client's trust and the truth come first. Richard underestimated us. He thought he could control the narrative. Today, we take it back. By mid-morning, I contacted Sarah Thompson. Sarah, I said, we're going live with the coordinated disclosures. Be prepared for media questions, internal firm fallout, and public attention. She took a deep breath. Olivia, I trust you completely. Let's do this. At 10 a.m., the first wave of evidence hit the press. Carefully constructed press releases, backed by verified documents, were released simultaneously. Investigative journalists began publishing stories connecting Richard and Victor Lane to deliberate manipulations, financial gains, and political interference. I watched as social media lit up, conversations shifting from confusion to outrage, disbelief to demand for accountability. Richard's attempts to counteract were feeble, his panic evident even from afar. "Olivia," he emailed repeatedly, "stop this immediately. You're jeopardizing everything." I ignored him. Every move we made was calculated, precise, and irreversible. Evidence and transparency spoke louder than his ego. By noon, news outlets had confirmed the connections. Lane's firm was under scrutiny, his clients questioning the ethics of their engagements. Richard's reputation was unraveling in real time, employees whispering, investors calling, the entire firm shaking. Marcus turned to me. "Olivia, traffic analysis shows massive engagement. The public and media are fully aligned with the disclosures. Richard's credibility is collapsing." I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. This was justice. Not just for Everbright, but for anyone who had suffered from his manipulations. By early afternoon, Sarah held a private meeting with her executive team. "Olivia," she whispered, "this is incredible. The narrative has fully shifted. Investors trust us again, and we're seen as proactive rather than reactive." I nodded. "And we've also exposed Richard and Lane's operations. This is beyond PR. It's accountability." Richard tried one last desperate maneuver. He called Everbright directly, attempting to blame the client for the crisis. Sarah firmly refused to engage. "Olivia," she said later, "I won't let him manipulate the situation further." I smiled faintly. That's the difference between leadership and ego. By late afternoon, Victor Lane's manipulations were being dissected in news stories, corporate blogs, and social media threads. Analysts questioned his client's loyalty, and competitors publicly distanced themselves. I called my mother. "Mom, it's happening." Her voice was proud, calm, and warm. "Olivia, you've done everything right. You've protected the client, exposed corruption, and maintained integrity." I exhaled, exhausted but satisfied. "Yes," I said, "but the final step remains: ensuring Richard faces consequences and establishing safeguards to prevent future crises." By evening, confidential sources confirmed internal investigations at the firm had begun. Richard's mismanagement, combined with collusion with Lane, was under review by executives and legal counsel. Emily updated me. "Olivia, the client's stock is stable, public sentiment is overwhelmingly positive, and the firm is in internal chaos. The tide has turned completely." I allowed myself a moment of quiet triumph. All the hours, the tension, the planning, it had culminated in this precise outcome. Integrity had won. That night, I reflected on everything in my apartment overlooking the city. The sabotage, the betrayal, the political and financial web we uncovered, and the client's unwavering trust. Every challenge had led to this moment, proving that skill, strategy, and courage could overcome even the most entrenched corruption. I knew the next steps would involve finalizing Richard's removal, guiding the client through the aftermath, and ensuring Lane and his network were held accountable. But for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to feel a sense of accomplishment, a rare satisfaction in seeing justice executed carefully and effectively. And as I finally turned off my laptop, I felt a deep resolve. This wasn't the end of the journey, but a turning point. From this moment, I knew I could handle any crisis, confront any corruption, and emerge not just victorious, but stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to protect the truth. Monday morning after the coordinated exposure felt almost surreal. The city moved as usual, but I could feel the tremors my actions had caused within the firm. Richard Lawson's empire of influence was cracking, and the aftermath was something I had to navigate carefully. I arrived at a discreet cafe to meet Sarah Thompson and her executive team. "Sarah," I said, "the public side of the crisis is under control, but we need to manage internal fallout carefully." She nodded. "Olivia, I trust you completely. Our reputation is safe, but some employees are panicked, and Richard's allies might try to sabotage internally." I smiled faintly. "That's why we're here. We have to reassure staff, clarify roles, and ensure no one misuses this moment to create new crises." Emily had prepared internal memos, clear and concise, outlining facts without finger-pointing. Marcus monitored communications, flagging any rumors or misleading information. Jenna coordinated direct conversations with key staff to maintain confidence. "Olivia," Sarah said quietly, "are you sure you want to handle internal communications? The firm might resist your authority after what happened." I leaned back. Sarah, trust is built through transparency and competence. I may have been sidelined, but now I act in everyone's best interest. By mid-morning, we rolled out a controlled briefing for employees. Carefully worded messages emphasized the client's continued confidence, transparency about past actions, and assurances that the firm was stabilizing. During the briefing, I addressed the staff directly. I know these past weeks have been chaotic, I said. Many of you have questions, concerns, and frustrations. My role is to ensure we emerge stronger, with integrity guiding our actions. Whispers ran through the room, but I continued. Evidence has been gathered, the client's trust is intact, and we've ensured the narrative outside is truthful and accurate. Inside, our job is to support one another and focus on long-term stability. After the briefing, a few employees approached me privately. Olivia, one whispered, we were worried about our jobs. Thank you for transparency. I smiled. Our strength comes from teamwork and honesty. Keep communicating, stay focused, and don't let fear dictate actions. Meanwhile, I met with Marcus and Emily to begin the next phase, consolidating the client relationship and ensuring no lingering vulnerabilities. Olivia, Marcus said, the client has expressed deep gratitude. They want a more permanent partnership with you. I nodded. That's good. But we also need to formalize safeguards to prevent future manipulations. Emily, draft protocols for client communications, crisis response, and internal reporting structures. By late afternoon, I received a message from my mother. Olivia, she said, you've handled the aftermath with as much skill as the crisis itself. Remember, how you manage the recovery is as important as winning the battle. I responded. Thank you, Mom. Your guidance has been invaluable. That evening, I spoke with Sarah privately. Olivia, she said, I want to formalize our partnership. Your actions saved the company. I want you to lead PR initiatives moving forward. I felt a surge of pride. Sarah, I said, I'm honored, but I also need independence. My vision extends beyond a single client. I want to build a firm dedicated to integrity, transparency, and protecting clients from manipulation. She smiled. Olivia, that's exactly what we need. We'll support you. By Tuesday, I began drafting the foundation for my own PR company. I reached out to trusted allies, including Marcus, Emily, and Jenna, proposing a firm that prioritized ethical crisis management, proactive client protection, and exposing corrupt practices wherever they occurred. Olivia, Jenna said, this is ambitious. Are you ready for that leap? I looked out at the city skyline. More than ready. We've seen firsthand what happens when integrity is compromised. It's time to create a space where clients can rely on honesty, skill, and unwavering support. Meanwhile, Richard continued to flail within his firm. I watched from a distance as internal investigations progressed. His authority was crumbling, his allies abandoning him. The satisfaction was quiet but profound. Victor Lane's network also began unraveling. Journalists and analysts exposed more of his manipulations, creating a ripple effect through his client base and reputation. By midweek, my plans for the new firm were taking shape. Olivia Reed PR would specialize in crisis management, transparent communications, and ethical advocacy for clients facing manipulation, sabotage, or public attacks. Marcus helped design operational protocols, ensuring secure communication channels, rapid response capabilities, and media strategies aligned with integrity. Emily organized client outreach and staffing logistics. Jenna focused on internal culture, emphasizing collaboration, accountability, and trust. I reflected on the journey so far, being sidelined, Richard's betrayals, the client's trust, and the public exposure. Each challenge had strengthened my resolve and clarified my purpose. That Friday, I announced my departure from the old firm publicly, framing it as a natural evolution toward creating a company rooted in ethics and accountability. Media coverage was overwhelmingly positive, highlighting my successes during the crisis, my leadership, and my vision for the future. Sarah called. Olivia, you're inspiring a lot of people. The market is noticing. I smiled. It's not about recognition. It's about proving that integrity, skill, and courage matter, even in an industry driven by ego and shortcuts. By the weekend, I had secured initial clients for Olivia Reed PR, including Sarah and other companies seeking ethical crisis management. The foundation was solid. Talented, trusted team members, clear protocols, and a reputation built on transparency and results. Late Saturday night, I looked out over the city from my apartment balcony, the skyline glittering under the lights. I thought about every obstacle, every betrayal, and every victory, and I realized this journey wasn't just about saving one client. It was about proving that competence, courage, and integrity could overcome even the most entrenched corruption. I whispered to myself, this is only the beginning. Olivia Reed PR will be more than a firm. It will be a movement, a standard, a beacon for clients who deserve truth, protection, and advocacy. And as I turned to prepare for the week ahead, I felt an unparalleled sense of purpose. The crisis had ended, but the fight for integrity, transparency, and justice was only beginning. The morning sunlight poured through the apartment windows, and I realized just how different things felt. For the first time in months, I wasn't running from a crisis. I was creating my own path. Olivia Reed PR was no longer an idea. It was taking shape, and with Marcus, Emily, and Jenna by my side, I could feel the energy in the room crackle. We sat around the table with laptops open, scribbles of notes and diagrams scattered everywhere. I looked at them and said, this isn't just a new firm. This is a statement. We're showing the world that PR doesn't have to compromise integrity. We can solve problems, protect clients, and expose corruption all at the same time. Emily leaned back and smiled, her fingers drumming on the table. People are going to notice. They're going to be cautious at first, but once they see what we can do, they won't want to work with anyone else. Jenna added, the culture we build here is going to matter just as much as the strategy. We set the tone, and it starts with trust, accountability, and real teamwork. I nodded, exactly. And we're going to show them that PR isn't just spin, it's strategy, foresight, and sometimes courage. The phone rang. It was Sarah. Olivia, she said, we're ready to sign the contracts. Your approach, the transparency, the way you handled everything, it's exactly what we need. I felt a surge of pride. Thank you, Sarah. We won't just manage crises, we'll prevent them whenever possible. Your company is safe, and so is your reputation. By afternoon, I was scheduling meetings with other prospective clients. Each call felt different than before. I wasn't negotiating under pressure or trying to save a failing reputation. I was presenting a vision. I spoke about proactive strategies, ethical crisis management, and protecting clients from manipulation. Their responses were cautious at first, but curiosity turned into trust as I explained the systems we had built. Later, Marcus showed me the preliminary campaign designs for monitoring public perception in real time. Olivia, he said, this isn't just strategy. This is control without panic. We can spot problems before they escalate, analyze them, and act decisively. I smiled. That's exactly what we need. The key isn't just responding. It's anticipating, planning, and acting with precision. By evening, Jenna and I were reviewing internal protocols for the firm, making sure every communication was secure, every procedure airtight. She said, Olivia, the people we bring in next need to understand that this isn't just a job, it's a responsibility. I agreed. Absolutely. We're not just solving problems for clients, we're setting a new standard in the industry. And if someone wants to challenge us, they'll see that integrity is non-negotiable. That night, I stood by the window, looking out at the city. Lights flickered like stars, and the streets buzzed with life. I thought about Richard, Lane, and every person who ever tried to underestimate me. Let them watch, I thought. They'll see the difference between ego and true leadership. I whispered to myself, this is the beginning. We're not just a new firm, we're a movement. A firm that protects, exposes, and thrives on doing what's right, no shortcuts, no compromises. And I knew that as we took our first steps publicly, every challenge ahead would only make us stronger. Every client, every crisis, every story we touched would carry a message. Integrity isn't optional, it's the foundation of everything we do. The day started with a quiet intensity. The office hummed with energy, people moving with purpose. Marcus was scanning feeds, Emily had her fingers flying across the keyboard, and Jenna was rehearsing talking points with a client over video. I leaned back in my chair, watching it all, feeling the mix of pride and adrenaline that comes from building something from nothing. A client walked in, a mid-size company caught in a storm of rumors that threatened to ruin their newest product launch. The CEO looked like he hadn't slept in days. I motioned for him to sit. Don't worry, I said. We'll fix this, but we need to be deliberate. Panic will make mistakes. He swallowed and nodded. Olivia, he said quietly, I feel like I'm underwater. I leaned forward. You're not underwater, I told him. You're on the surface, and we're the ones keeping your head above water. Stay calm, answer questions honestly, trust the process. Marcus briefed him on how we were tracking mentions and sentiment. Emily shared a statement we had drafted that corrected inaccuracies without sounding defensive. Jenna coached the client's team on how to speak with confidence, even when the questions were loaded. The first press interaction was tense. Reporters asked pointed questions, some designed to provoke. I watched my client's hands tremble, but I stayed calm. Speak truthfully, I whispered. Don't overthink. By the end of the hour, the tension had eased. The client's words landed clearly, and the story began to shift. Outside the office, conversations online started reflecting understanding rather than outrage. I exhaled, realizing that this, more than anything, was why I loved what I did. Crisis management wasn't about spin, it was about control, dignity, and the ability to see the truth clearly and act on it. Later, I got a call from someone I hadn't heard from in years, my mother. Olivia, she said, I've been following what you've built. You've done more than manage crises. You're changing the way people think about PR. I smiled. Thanks, Mom. I'm trying to make it about more than just saving reputations. It's about protecting people, making sure they're heard, and doing it without compromise. Then came a bigger challenge. A nonprofit reached out, panicked because a volunteer incident had been misreported online. They didn't have resources, and the damage could affect thousands. I took it personally. This wasn't just about saving a client, it was about justice. We worked quietly but decisively. Marcus tracked every mention, Emily crafted messaging that explained the truth without exaggeration, and Jenna coached the nonprofit staff on interviews. I stayed in constant contact with the director, walking her through each step. When their story finally reached the public correctly, the relief and gratitude from their staff reminded me why I had started this journey. As our firm grew, challenges kept coming, some subtle, some aggressive. Certain clients wanted shortcuts, manipulations to speed results. I refused. That wasn't the way I operated. Integrity became our brand, the unshakable principle that defined every decision. Some walked away, but those who stayed trusted us completely, and their trust mattered far more than any quick victory. The old rivals tried to test us too. Richard's name popped up in industry whispers. Lane's manipulations showed cracks under our rising reputation. Watching the people who once underestimated me scramble reminded me that courage and integrity often outweighed cunning and deceit. The quiet victories were the most rewarding. A CEO regained control of the narrative without losing credibility. Employees learned to speak confidently under scrutiny. Stories that could have destroyed careers were corrected, preserving dignity. Those were the moments that mattered. Late one night, I looked out over the skyline. I thought about the chaos I had survived, the betrayals I had endured, and the victories I had fought for. Everything had led here. A firm built on principles, a team I trusted, a reputation earned honestly. I knew that Olivia Reed PR wasn't just a company. It was a force, a standard. A promise that in a world where shortcuts often rule, integrity could prevail, and it was only the beginning. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching every move we made. Our success had drawn attention, and not all of it was good. That morning, a call came from a client whose company had been accused of financial misconduct. The accusations were baseless, but the media frenzy was real. I walked into the office, my team already buzzing. Marcus, we need to map every possible leak. Emily, start drafting statements that are honest but firm. Jenna, prepare the executives to speak without hesitation. The client, trembling, looked at me. Olivia, they said, what if this destroys everything? It won't, I replied. We'll handle it, step by step. Focus on what's true, and we'll make sure everyone else sees it too. When the press conference began, I stood close to the client, whispering guidance. Speak calmly, don't overcomplicate, trust the truth. Questions came fast, sharp, intended to provoke. But the client held steady. By the end, the narrative had shifted. Coverage began to reflect the facts rather than rumor. Relief washed over the room. That was the power of preparation and honesty. Later, while reviewing media reactions, I noticed a pattern. Certain journalists were being fed selective stories by someone with insider knowledge. My heart sank. This wasn't just random attacks. Someone was trying to manipulate the narrative deliberately. I called Marcus over. Look at this, I said. These patterns aren't coincidence. Someone's trying to sabotage us or the client. He frowned. That's serious. Any idea who? I shook my head. Not yet, but we'll find out. We always do. By the afternoon, I had a hunch. My old boss, the one who had undermined me before, had a history of manipulating stories for personal gain. It made sense that he would try to destabilize my firm now that we were gaining influence. I gathered the team. This isn't just a client issue anymore. Someone is actively trying to sabotage us. But we won't react in panic. We document, we verify, and we act strategically. Every move counts. Emily and Marcus dug through communications, tracing leaks and cross-referencing sources. Jenna prepared the client for potential follow-ups. I coordinated everything, making sure each action was precise and measured. Hours later, the evidence was clear. The sabotage was deliberate, coming from someone who knew the inner workings of PR and media manipulation. I shared the proof with the client. They looked stunned. "Olivia," they said quietly, "what do we do now?" "We do what we've always done," I said. "Expose the truth, protect your story, and stay firm. Lies only survive if we allow them." When the story broke publicly, the attempt to sabotage backfired. The truth came out, the client's reputation remained intact, and our firm's credibility skyrocketed. It was a reminder that even in the face of targeted attacks, careful strategy, integrity, and vigilance won the day. That evening, I sat in the office alone, reflecting. Every challenge, every attack, every moment of doubt had shaped the firm into what it was now. Olivia Reed PR wasn't just about handling crises, it was about anticipating them, standing firm, and showing the world that integrity could thrive even when tested. The next client was different. A well-known celebrity had been misquoted in a story that painted them as insensitive, and social media had exploded. I could see the panic in their eyes when they walked in. "Breathe," I told them. "We're going to set this straight. Speak truthfully, don't over-explain, and don't respond to the trolls. Let us handle the messaging." Marcus had already identified every platform where misinformation had spread, tracking reposts and sentiment. Emily worked on a statement that corrected the record without sounding defensive, and Jenna coached the celebrity on interviews, practicing tone, posture, and phrasing until it sounded natural. When the press interviews began, I stayed close, whispering reminders. "Remember, the truth doesn't need embellishment. Answer calmly. Keep it simple." By the end of the day, the storm had passed. Headlines reflected facts rather than speculation, and the celebrity walked out of the conference room relieved, smiling for the first time in days. Watching that, I felt a deep satisfaction. This wasn't about spin. This was about protecting someone's voice from being twisted. Not long after, I received an email from a former client. "Olivia," they wrote, "I saw how you handled the last situation. You're doing more than PR, you're setting a standard." I leaned back in my chair. "That's exactly what I want," I whispered to myself. "To change the way people think about this work, to show that you don't have to compromise to succeed." Then came a more personal challenge. One of my old bosses, the one who had sabotaged me years ago, tried to publicly discredit the firm. He leaked half-truths to journalists, hoping to make it look like I had manipulated a client. I didn't panic. I gathered evidence, documented every interaction, every email, every step we had taken. The truth was on our side. When the full story came out, his scheme was exposed. His credibility crumbled and my firm's reputation strengthened. It was vindication, but more than that, it was proof that integrity and preparation always outlast manipulation and deceit. Emily, Marcus, and Jenna celebrated quietly in the office. We didn't need to shout. The work spoke for itself. I felt a wave of pride. This was exactly the team I had imagined when I first took the leap to start the firm. Even as our influence grew, new crises kept coming. A political client faced allegations that could make national headlines. I handled each interaction personally, coordinating messages, media responses, and strategy with precision. We didn't just react, we anticipated. Every move was deliberate, every statement verified. Every interview rehearsed to ensure the truth was clear. And when the storm finally passed, the client stood stronger than before. Standing alone later in the office, looking out at the skyline, I realized something. Olivia Reed PR wasn't just a company anymore. It was a force. We had proven that honesty, courage, and strategic thinking could prevail even in a world built on deception, and the journey wasn't over. There were always new challenges, new stories, and new clients who needed someone to protect them, but I knew we were ready. We weren't just handling crises, we were changing the rules of the game. One day, a client walked in who had been blindsided by a coordinated attack from a rival company. It was obvious this wasn't random. I gathered the team immediately. "Someone is orchestrating this," I said. "We need to find out who, how, and why." Marcus, trace every leak and every unusual mention. Emily, draft messaging that maintains control but doesn't escalate. Jenna, prepare the client to respond calmly, without panic. The client looked at me, fear and frustration written on their face. "Olivia," they whispered, "I don't even know where to start." "We start with the facts," I said. "Nothing else matters until we know them." As Marcus dug deeper, the pattern became clear. The attacks were coming from a network connected to our old rival, the one who had tried to sabotage my firm before. But this time, it was more than just personal, it was a full-scale attempt to destroy the client. I shared the evidence with the client. They looked at the documents, stunned. Olivia, they said, can we even fight this? We don't just fight it, I said. We expose it. We control the story. And we make sure the truth wins. We prepared a press statement backed by irrefutable evidence, coordinated interviews to correct misinformation, and created a strategy to anticipate the rivals' next moves. The response was precise, targeted, and truthful. Within hours, the narrative began to shift. The rivals' attempts to manipulate the story were exposed, their credibility weakened, and the client regained their standing. It was a turning point. I realized that our firm had become more than a service, it was a shield, not just for clients, but for the truth. Soon after, an unexpected call came from my mother. Olivia, she said, I just want you to know that what you've built is extraordinary. You're not just handling crises, you're setting a standard. I smiled. Thanks, Mom, that means more than you know, but there was one final challenge. My old boss, desperate to regain power, tried one last time to manipulate a high-profile client against us. He spread false claims, leaked partial information, and attempted to sow distrust. I didn't hesitate. I assembled evidence, documented everything, and presented it to the client with full transparency. This time, the pattern was undeniable. My old boss had been manipulating events for years. When the full truth reached the public, it was explosive. The lies he had propagated unraveled in front of everyone, and the client publicly acknowledged our integrity and skill. The satisfaction was immense, not just for winning, but for seeing justice done. Standing in the office afterward, looking around at my team, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Marcus, Emily, Jenna, they had each played a critical role. Together, we had faced deception, sabotage, and manipulation, and come out stronger. The firm's reputation soared. Clients sought us out not because we could spin a story, but because we could protect them, anticipate crises, and act with courage and clarity. We weren't just surviving the industry, we were shaping it. I thought back to all the moments that had led here, the betrayals, the challenges, the late nights, and realized that every obstacle had been preparation. Every setback had taught me a lesson. Every victory had proven that integrity, intelligence, and courage were inseparable. And as I looked out over the city lights, I understood something clearly. Olivia Reed PR wasn't just a company. It was a legacy. A statement that in a world full of shortcuts and deceit, truth and courage could not only survive, they could thrive. The journey had been long and the battles hard, but the message was undeniable. Stand firm, protect those who trust you, and never compromise your values. That was the standard we had set, and it would guide everything we did from now on. The next client was a political figure whose career had been derailed by a scandal that was part rumor, part deliberate manipulation. The media was relentless, and even his closest advisors seemed to panic. I met with him privately. Olivia, he said, I don't know how to fix this. My life, my career, everything, it's crumbling. I leaned forward. It's not crumbling. It's just being tested. We're going to navigate this carefully. Every word, every move, every interview, we control it. The truth is our strongest weapon, and you have to trust it. Marcus had already mapped every angle, every misleading article, every social media post designed to inflame. Emily drafted statements that addressed the facts without overcomplicating or defensiveness. Jenna rehearsed him endlessly, making sure he could speak calmly and confidently under fire. The first press briefing was brutal. Questions came fast and pointed, some designed to provoke outrage. I stayed close, whispering, answer the truth. Keep it simple. You're in control. By the end, the narrative began to shift. Outrage turned into understanding, confusion into clarity. The client's credibility, though battered, held. He looked at me afterward, relief in his eyes. Olivia, he said quietly, I don't know how you do this. I smiled. It's not magic. It's preparation, strategy, and integrity. We don't just fix problems. We anticipate them, we guide them, and we protect the truth. But as the crisis stabilized, I noticed something unsettling. Certain journalists were being fed selective stories, their questions carefully angled to provoke the exact reactions the rival wanted. This wasn't coincidence, it was deliberate. Someone was trying to manipulate the entire narrative. I gathered Marcus, Emily, and Jenna. This is bigger than one client, I said. Someone is orchestrating attacks to control the story. We track everything, document every leak, and prepare for their next move. Hours later, the source became clear. My old rival, the one who had tried to undermine me in the past, was behind it. But this time, the stakes were higher. It wasn't just personal, it was a coordinated attempt to destroy the client's reputation. I shared the evidence with the client. Olivia, they whispered, can we even fight this? We don't just fight it, I said. We expose it. We control the narrative, Lies only survive if we let them. The strategy was precise. Press statements were released with irrefutable evidence, interviews carefully managed, and social media monitored in real time to counter false claims. Slowly, the truth began to emerge. The rivals' attempts to manipulate perception failed, their credibility diminished, and our client regained public trust. Afterward, in the quiet of the office, I looked at my team. We hadn't just managed another crisis. We had turned a calculated attack into proof that strategy and integrity could win against deliberate deception. I realized then that Olivia Reed PR was no longer just a firm. We were a shield for truth, a force for protection, and a standard for how PR should be done. And I knew that every challenge ahead would be another chance to prove it. A few days later, another client arrived, desperate and exhausted. This time, it was a nonprofit facing accusations that threatened not just their reputation, but the very mission they had spent years building. The staff were panicked, their fear palpable. "Take a deep breath," I told them. "We're going to fix this, but first, we need to understand exactly what's happening. Nothing else matters until we know the facts." Marcus immediately began tracking every post, every mention, and every comment that could affect public perception. Emily started drafting messaging that clarified the truth without sounding defensive. Jenna worked with the staff, coaching them on interviews, press statements, and public appearances. The problem was more insidious than I initially realized. Someone had deliberately planted misleading information to amplify fear and confusion. I felt the familiar surge of determination. We don't just react to crises, we dismantle attempts at deception. I gathered the nonprofit's leadership. "Listen," I said, "this is going to be challenging, but you're not alone. Speak honestly. Admit what needs to be admitted, but don't let anyone twist your intentions." Their first media interaction was tense. Questions came fast, some accusatory, some based on outright lies. I stayed close, whispering guidance. "Answer truthfully. Keep calm, you control what you say." By the end, the tide had turned. The public began to see the facts, the lies unraveled, and the nonprofit regained credibility. Relief washed over the staff, and I realized again why I did this work. It wasn't about corporate wins or high-profile clients. It was about protecting people, missions, and the truth. Later that evening, I reviewed the patterns of attacks on both this client and the political figure we had helped earlier. It was no coincidence, they were connected. Someone was systematically trying to manipulate perception and destroy reputations. I called Marcus over. "Look at this," I said. "It's the same network feeding false stories. We're dealing with more than just isolated incidents." He frowned. "That's calculated, strategic. Whoever is behind this knows the industry well." I nodded. "And we're going to make sure everyone sees it. Lies only survive when they go unchallenged." That night, I thought about the journey so far, the betrayals, the challenges, the victories. Each crisis had strengthened the firm, each victory had reinforced our reputation. But this new discovery made it clear that our work was bigger than any single client. Olivia Reed PR wasn't just handling crises, we were confronting deliberate attempts to manipulate truth itself. And I knew that the battles ahead would test everything we had built, but we were ready. We had strategy, integrity, and a team that believed in the work as much as I did. And that belief, I realized, was the most powerful tool of all. The next morning, I got a call from a client who had been caught in the middle of a corporate smear campaign. Their competitors were leaking false information, spinning stories to ruin their reputation, and the media was amplifying it. I could feel the tension in their voice as they spoke. "Olivia," they said, "I don't know if I can survive this." "You can," I said firmly. "We'll take control, and we'll make sure the truth is what people see. Don't respond to every accusation. Let us handle the narrative." Marcus had already started tracing every leak, identifying patterns and connections. Emily drafted statements that exposed the misinformation without sounding defensive, while Jenna prepped the client for press interviews, teaching them how to remain calm under scrutiny. As the press conference began, I stayed close, whispering guidance. "Speak truthfully. Keep it simple. Don't let them bait you." The questions came fast and pointed, designed to provoke. But the client held their ground. Slowly, the story began to shift. The lies and manipulations started to unravel, and the public perception began to align with reality. Relief spread through the room as the client regained confidence. Afterward, I gathered the team. "This isn't just a victory for a client," I said. "This is proof that integrity, preparation, and strategy can withstand even the most calculated attacks." Then the realization hit me. Our old rival, the one who had tried to undermine me in the past, was coordinating all these attacks. They weren't just trying to damage individual clients, they were trying to destroy the credibility of Olivia Reed PR itself. I shared the evidence with the team. We need to expose this, I said, not with anger or revenge, but with facts. Every lie, every attempt at manipulation, every hidden agenda must be revealed. We started compiling everything: emails, media leaks, timelines, connections. By evening, the pattern was undeniable. The rivals' attempts to sabotage clients were systematic and deliberate. I called a meeting with the clients who had been targeted. Listen, I said, the attacks you faced weren't random. Someone orchestrated this. We're going to make sure the truth is public. We'll handle the exposure carefully so that you come out stronger, not weaker. The clients nodded, relief and trust in their eyes. Together, we crafted a plan to reveal the truth while protecting everyone involved. The next wave of public statements, backed by irrefutable evidence, began to dismantle the rivals' credibility piece by piece. By the end of the week, the narrative had shifted completely. The clients were vindicated. The rivals' manipulations were exposed. And Olivia Reed PR had not only survived the attacks, but had demonstrated to the industry that integrity and skill could overcome even the most calculated sabotage. Sitting in the office that night, looking at my team, I felt a surge of pride. Marcus, Emily, Jenna, they had each been critical to this victory. Together, we had faced deception, sabotage, and manipulation, and come out stronger. We weren't just managing crises anymore, we were setting a standard. And I knew that no matter what came next, Olivia Reed PR was ready for it. The tension was palpable when I got the next call. This time, it wasn't just a client under attack, it was someone in the media trying to spin a story that implicated one of our key clients in a scandal they had nothing to do with. The reach was massive, and the potential damage catastrophic. I gathered the team immediately. Marcus, trace every source. Emily, draft a clear, factual response. Jenna, prep the client for interviews and make sure they stay calm. The client looked at me, panic in their eyes. Olivia, they said, they're going to ruin me. Not if we control the story, I said. Stick to the truth, speak clearly, don't react to provocation. We're going to make sure your side is heard. As the interviews began, I stayed close, whispering advice. Answer factually, don't get defensive, control the narrative. The pressure was intense, questions sharp, designed to elicit mistakes. But the client held their ground. Slowly, the narrative began to turn. Facts replaced speculation. The client regained credibility. Relief washed over everyone in the room, and I felt that familiar satisfaction of having protected someone's voice from being distorted. Later that day, I noticed patterns in the attacks. They weren't random. Someone was coordinating everything, feeding false stories to specific journalists to amplify the impact. I called Marcus over. Look at this, I said. Someone knows exactly how to manipulate perception. He frowned. That's precise. They know the media, the timelines, even our clients' responses. I nodded. We need to expose this strategically. Not with anger, but with facts. Every lie, every manipulation, everything must be documented. Over the next days, we compiled evidence. Emails, timelines, connections between the rival, former colleagues, and media outlets. The pattern was undeniable. This was not just a professional threat, it was a deliberate attempt to dismantle our firm and harm our clients. I shared the findings with the clients who had been targeted. You've been attacked systematically, I said, but the truth is on our side. We will make sure it reaches the public, and that you are vindicated. We released statements backed by irrefutable evidence, coordinated interviews, and monitored social media to counter misinformation in real time. Slowly, the attacks unraveled. The rivals' credibility diminished, and our clients regained their standing. By the end of the week, the story was clear. Olivia Reed PR had not only survived an orchestrated campaign of sabotage, but had proven that strategy, preparation, and integrity could withstand even the most calculated attacks. That night, I sat alone in the office, looking at the skyline. The firm had faced deception, manipulation, and relentless attacks, and had emerged stronger. We were no longer just managing crises. We were defining what it meant to act with courage, skill, and integrity in a world that often rewarded shortcuts and deceit. I realized then that the journey wasn't just about surviving crises. It was about creating a standard, a legacy, and a firm that people could trust to always protect the truth. Olivia Reed PR wasn't just a company anymore. It was a force. And the final challenge, the ultimate confrontation with my old rival and the last exposure of their schemes, was just ahead. The day finally came when I faced the person who had tried to sabotage me, my firm, and multiple clients over the years. I had all the evidence: emails, timelines, witness statements, connections between their manipulations and the attacks on my clients. Everything was laid out clearly, indisputable. I walked into the meeting room, my heart steady. The rival looked smug, confident, as if nothing could touch them. "Olivia," they said, "I thought you'd crumble under pressure." I smiled calmly. "You underestimated me, and now everyone will see the truth." I laid out the evidence piece by piece. Each lie, each manipulation, each attempt to discredit clients or my firm. Their face changed as the documents and timelines were presented. No smirk remained. By the end, there was no denying it. Their schemes were exposed, their credibility destroyed. The clients who had been attacked were vindicated, the media had the facts, and the public perception shifted entirely. After the confrontation, I stepped outside, breathing in the city air. Relief, satisfaction, and a deep sense of justice washed over me. We had faced deception, manipulation, and sabotage, and come out stronger with integrity intact. Back at the office, the team gathered around. Marcus, Emily, Jenna, we had done it together. We hadn't just saved our clients, we had set a new standard. We had shown that truth, preparation, and courage could prevail over deceit and corruption. That night, I called my mother. "Mom," I said, "we did it. We exposed everything, and everyone who deserved justice got it." I heard her voice, warm and proud. "Olivia, you've done more than handle crises. You've created a legacy. You've shown that standing firm and protecting the truth matters more than anything else." I realized she was right. Olivia Reed PR wasn't just a company anymore. It was a force for integrity, a beacon for clients who needed protection, and a model for how PR could be done ethically and courageously. In the following months, we took on new challenges, new clients, and continued to grow. But the lesson remained the same: honesty, preparation, and courage always win. Shortcuts and deceit may seem powerful, but truth is unstoppable when you defend it with skill and conviction. Standing in the office one evening, looking over the skyline, I smiled. The journey had been long and difficult, but it was worth every sleepless night, every fight, every challenge. Olivia Reed PR had proven that even in a world full of shortcuts, deception, and power plays, integrity could survive and thrive. I turned to the team, who were quietly celebrating another client victory. "Thank you," I said. "This is just the beginning. We've shown the world what's possible, and together we'll keep proving that truth and courage matter more than anything." And in that moment, I knew it was true. The crises would come, the attacks would come, but we were ready. Not just to survive them, but to rise above them and help others rise too. That was the legacy we had built, and it would continue to grow. Olivia Reed PR was no longer just a firm. It was a standard, a force, and a promise that in every challenge, the truth would be defended and integrity would prevail.